It's another edition of Time About the Movies, and today we're taking a look at the films of August 27th, 1999. We've got a lot of movies to look at today, 6 of them to be exact, so let's not waste any more time. Let's just go ahead and jump right on into it. We'll start off with the biggest new release of the weekend, Antonio Banderas in The 13th Warrior. So you've got a story here where you have a man played by Antonio Banderas who has fallen in love with the wrong woman and is sent by the Sultan himself on a diplomatic mission to a distant land as an ambassador. Stopping at a Viking village point to restock on supplies, he finds himself unwittingly embroiled in a quest to banish a mysterious threat in a distant Viking land. John McTiernan directed this film. This is also a co-production based off of a Michael Crichton book, Eaters of the Dead, and you basically have a story here that's basically a loose adaptation of the tale of Beowulf, combined with some historical accounts of the Volga Vikings, and it has Antonio Banderas, like I said, in here. Crichton himself also directed some uncredited reshoots on here, and this is the second movie John McTiernan directed that came out in August of 1999, with the Thomas Crown Affair being a much more successful film. This one was one of the biggest bombs of the year. It is still considered the biggest bomb of the year, which, believe it or not, that's hard to believe considering that Wild Wild West came out this exact same year and bombed hard. But this is the biggest official bomb of the year, with losses up to $129 million. It only brought in $61 million at the box office after a $160 million budget. So it really, really tanked. And when you look at it, you could definitely see why, because it's a film that just has so much going on all over the place that it just doesn't have the necessary things it needs to really make itself stand out on its own. It's a very bland story. These characters are poorly casted. Omar Sharif is in this film, and he was so disappointed by this film. He temporarily retired from acting. He would only come back a couple years later, but he has gone on to say that this was a film that made him want to retire. I mean, that tells you everything you need to know about how bad this movie was. I mean, this is a film that is just so all over the place. They delayed this film for a year. This thing started shooting all the way back in '97, so this thing's been sitting on a shelf for 2 years, and they put this out thinking that this was going to be some kind of a success, and it was not. And this film has largely been forgotten, and quite frankly, I can't imagine you can't really imagine why that would be. What am I saying here? And really, when you look at it, you can see why. It's just a film that feels like it's so all over the place, like it's trying to create the next big franchise, and it's just not there. It's just not a film that works on any level, shape, or form. Just bad casting all around. It was just a missed opportunity on so many levels. Just a terrible, terrible movie. So that's The 13th Warrior. With that said, let's go ahead and move on to our next movie, and that is In Too Deep. So Omar Epps plays this recent graduate of a Cincinnati police academy who dreams of working undercover. His wish is granted, and though success was given the task of taking down statewide crack dealer Dwayne Gittins, played by LL Cool J. Gittins is known as a family man and a man of the people, contributing to his community and helping those in need. However, there's another side to him, a ruthless leader of a criminal empire who will torture and kill anyone without question. Over time, Cole develops a close friendship with Gittins. Cole's superiors worry that the line between cop and bad guy is getting blurred and that both identities are becoming one. His loyalties are put to the ultimate test, just as they're enough evidence to take Gittins down for good. It's pretty much Training Day, except instead of Ethan Hawke here, you have Omar Epps, which, I mean, this is a really good performance by him. The movie overall is a decent film, but it's hard not to look at this and not think of Training Day. I think Training Day did that story a whole lot better. I saw Training Day first, and then I saw this film, so needless to say, I did not have the best way of coming into this film, so maybe it kind of hurts my overall feeling of the film. It did get some decent reviews overall, and it was seen as somewhat of a minor hit at the box office, so I guess there is at least somewhat of a fan base from it. But from what I remember from it, I thought it was just alright for what it was. I thought it was just okay. Nothing too crazy, nothing too amazing about it. The performances overall I thought were pretty good. Omar Epps, LL Cool J, Neil Long, Stanley Tucci, Hill Harper, Pam Grier. I mean, it's got a good enough cast overall, but it's a film that I saw once, have no real desire to ever go back to seeing it. Thought it was just okay for what it was, but I think Training Day did this a lot better, at least in my personal opinion it did. So that's In Too Deep, so let's go ahead and move on to our next film, Johnny Depp and Charlize Theron and the Astronaut's Wife. So you have a story here. We have a pair of shuttle astronauts leaving their spacecraft to repair a satellite. There's an explosion. NASA loses contact for 2 minutes, but they're both rescued and safely returned to Earth, and eventually it becomes evident that neither of the astronauts are quite the same. And judging by that trailer you see, as well as the long trailer, you basically have a mix between Alien, Rosemary's Baby, and even a little bit of Invasion of the Body Snatchers. And when you're trying to create a original sci-fi film like this, you really need to stand out on your own. Or you also have something like The Creator, something that has a lot of high ambitions to it, almost gets away with possibly doing something unique and different to make it stand out on its own, and it just kind of comes and goes. Like, this film does it badly. This is a film that really... Like, I thought Transcendence was the worst Johnny Depp movie, the most boring, the most bland movie. This thing makes Transcendence look like Citizen Kane by comparison, which isn't really saying a whole lot, but this movie is just so boring and so uninventive or inspired. There's just nothing about this movie that really works in this thing here, and it's a waste of talented actors. It's a waste of a script that just takes from so many different sci-fi properties and doesn't do anything new or different about it. A waste of direction, because the visual look of the film is horrible. How did you spend $75 million on a movie like this? I mean, honestly, where did all that money go? I mean, good lord, it's a bad movie. It's a horrible, horrible movie. And, yeah, you should avoid it like the plague. So, let's get to some good movies. Some real good movies, actually, at least for this first one we have here. Our next film, Albert Brooks' The Muse. So this is Albert Brooks' sixth film as a director, and you have a story where you have Sharon Stone playing the titular muse, who's tasked with reviving the career of a once-celebrated Hollywood screenwriter, played by Albert Brooks. You also have Andy McDowell and Jeff Bridges. This was a film this was one of those first adult films I remember when I was 10 years old. There was just something that kind of hooked me to this film. I didn't know what it was, but it really made me want to see the film. It finally took me a long time to finally see the film, and I finally got around to seeing it after all these years. And it really did not disappoint me. It's a really good film. Is it one of Albert Brooks' best movies? No, I think there's a lot better movies he's made as a director. I think Modern Romance, Lost in America, Defend Your Life, Mother, I think are much superior films. But this is probably my fifth favorite of the 7 films he's directed. I haven't seen Real Life, and I've not seen Looking for Comedy in the Muslim World, but of all the ones I've talked about, that's the one that I would say that is probably the least of my favorite ones, but it's still a really solid film. I do like a lot of the casting in this. Albert Brooks, Sharon Stone, Andy McDowell, Jeff Bridges. You have Mark Fairston, Bradley Whitford, Stephen Wright. Also cameos from Jennifer Tilly, Rob Reiner, Martin Scorsese, James Cameron. It's a real fun movie. A really enjoyable film overall. It was pretty good music done by Elton John, of all people. He actually composed the score for this film, which is pretty impressive stuff. And it's a quick film, too. It's barely over an hour and a half long, so it's a movie that you can watch, and by the end of it, you're just like, that was kind of fun. I'd like to see that again at some point, but maybe not in the near future or anything. But like I said, I've seen a lot better films directed by Albert Brooks. I think he's a really talented guy. I really would like to see more from him in terms of directing more movies, because guy can direct some really good, underrated gems. I mean, Defending Your Life is a great film, so is Mother. I mean, Lost in America, Modern Romance. These are really, really good films that a lot of people really do not know too much about, but this is a really good film. I really enjoyed this one a whole lot. I highly recommend checking it out. The Muse, really worth it. So that's The Muse. So let's go ahead and move on to the next movie, and that is Brendan Fraser as Dudley Do-Right. Based off the cartoon from the creators of Rocky and Bullwinkle and George of the Jungle. In fact, the film actually starts off with the fractured fairy tales from the Rocky and Bullwinkle series, but this is a brand new one. A really fun little short, too. If you've seen the original Rocky and Bullwinkle show, you definitely get the sense that this movie knew exactly what it was doing, trying to capture the spirit of the original series that this is based off of. But you have Brendan Fraser as a Royal Canadian Mountie who is busy keeping the peace in a small mountain town with his old rival Snidely Whiplash, played by Alfred Molina, coming up with a plot to buy all the property in town, then start a phony gold rush by seeding the river with nuggets. Can this well-meaning, though competently incompetent Mountie stop Whiplash's evil plan? What do you think is going to happen here? But this is actually, of course, the second film that Brendan Fraser has been involved in that's based off of a Jay Ward cartoon, the first being the much more successful George of the Jungle, which had a really good marketing campaign behind it. But when they said, from the creator of George of the Jungle and the star of George of the Jungle and the acclaimed director who saw George of the Jungle, and that acclaimed director actually is Hugh Wilson, who The last couple of films he's directed were actually kind of decent films. The First Wives Club and Blast from the Past, which also featured Brendan Fraser, which came out this year. As far as this film goes, it did not get the best reviews when it came out, but I won't go as far to say it's a terrible movie. In fact, there is more effort and more fun being put into this film than I think a lot of people give it credit for. It still bombed pretty hard. It only brought in $10 million off of a $70 million budget. So, yeah, needless to say, this was not a successful film by any means necessary, but it was still a fun film overall. I went into it enjoying it a lot more than I thought I was going to. I think it does everything that it can to be just as fun as the original Dudley Do-Right cartoons, while trying to be something that's a little bit more modern, but not too crazy like some of these other kids' films based off of classic movies we've been getting nowadays, stuff like Garfield and Fat Albert, which rely heavily on like stuff like poop jokes and all that type of stuff, like typical cliche kids' films as of today. But this film was at least trying to do something unique and something different, to be something kind of reminiscent of what the original cartoons were all about, and I think they did a decent enough job to it. Did it work all the way through? No, not really, but there were definitely times in this film where I was actually laughing pretty hard at some of the stuff they were able to do, and some of the stuff that really, like, it's amazing that they could get away with that back in 1999, because some of the stuff they do in here would not fly today, but that is kind of the fun of it. It's like a nice little time capsule of what the world used to be like, and it really was one of the big surprises. I was not really expecting to love it as much as I did, but I had a pretty good time watching it. It's actually a lot better than I think people would give it credit for. It knows it's silly. It knows it's ridiculous. It knows that it's trying its best, even though there's a good chance that probably nobody's going to see it. There is good talent involved here. I think they all do a pretty good job. The casting overall is top-notch. The direction's very well done by Hugh Wilson. It's really good. It's a ton of fun. If you go into it with the right mindset, you could find a lot to really admire about the film. I liked it a lot. Dudley Do-Right, I really enjoyed it. So let's go ahead and move on to our last film, and that is Jon Voight in A Dog of Flanders. Based off the children's book of the same name, you have a story about this poor but happy young fellow named Nello and his grandfather, played by Jon Voight, living alone, delivering milk as a livelihood in the outskirts of Antwerp, a city in Flanders, the Flemish or Dutch-speaking part of modern-day Belgium. They discover a beaten dog, a Bouvier, a large sturdy dog native to Flanders, and adopted and nurse it back to health, naming it Petrachi. I think I'm pronouncing that right. The middle name of Nello's mother, Mary, who died while Nello was very young. Nello's mother was a talented artist, and like his mother, he delights in drawing, and his friend Aloise is his model and greatest fan and supporter. Like I said, this is based off of the best-selling book of the same name. This is one I don't remember too much about. I remember seeing it back when I was little, and from what I remember from it, I didn't hate it. I thought it was kind of okay for what it was, but it's a film that kind of came and went for me. Like, I remember watching it, thinking it was alright for what it was, but I had no real desire to ever going back and seeing it again. So I don't know. I don't know if this one holds up as well as the last time I saw it, but from what I remember from it, I didn't hate it. I thought it was kind of decent, but like I said, it's been a long time since I've seen this film, so I can't really say for certain how it holds up now, but I mean, it's fine. From what I remember, I thought it was fine for what it was. So, yeah, that's A Dog of Flanders. And so on that note, we wrap up another edition of Time About the Movies. We'll jump into Labor Day weekend 1999 with two films, Cuba Gooding Jr. in Chill Factor, and also Alec Baldwin in Outside Providence. So two films to look at. We'll look at those next time. But until then, thank you very much for watching. And if you want to see more videos like this, please hit the playlist on the next page. Check out the previous episode. And I'll see you guys tomorrow for another episode. So thank you very much for watching. I will see you next time. And until then, as always, take care.